sleeper must awake.
Welcome, everyone, to this new episode of Hopscotch Chronicles podcast. I am your host, Dominic Vallée. I'm using that term host very loosely because as you maybe you're able to tell already, I'm very new to this. Thank you for bearing with me while I'm slowly climbing that very steep learning curve of interviewing people. And actually, I mean, there's something I have to learn is keep my ideas concise and straight to the point. And quick apology to today's guests, fans out there, people who came to listen to Ian Duncan speak. Quick apology if I was rambling a bit too much. We addressed in my defense, we addressed very complex subjects. We went very deep, kind of exploring ideas that are very hard to put into words, so that it didn't really help with me being a beginner in that field. Still, very interesting conversation. Ian is the kind of guest or the kind of person actually who really was really interesting and inspiring for me, because as knowledgeable as he is, he clearly is a mystic in the purest sense of the term. He's a Daoist. I don't know if I've said it already. Daoist priest, Daoist teacher, but for sure, like he talks about that in the interview. He's kind of exploding his own forays into mysticism and spirituality, far beyond just Daoism, to go to the deepest aspects of the human experience, I would say. Well, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but to me, that makes him the perfect example of a mystic. And our conversation was great. Look out for his answer. Specifically, I think was very interesting. His answer to the question, do discarnate entities have free will? It touches, to me, actually, it touches to this idea of, that trope, that the thing we hear sometimes, know thyself and you will know the universe and the gods. Definitely his answer kind of opens up to that concept. All right, so he was gracious enough to write a quick bio. I didn't ask him. Usually I write them myself, but he's written a really good one, so I'll read it to you right now. Ian Duncan is a mystic, a spiritual alchemist, and a Daoist priest. He transmits essential perspectives and methods direct from source, informed by deep study in the Dao and Dzogchen and accomplishment in Inner Alchemy. Ian's directly channeled sources include Ascended Masters in the Daoist tradition, the Celestial Worthy of the Numinous Treasure, and Thoth. Yeah, that last one was very surprising to me too, and actually maybe to him. I'll let you decide. So yeah, there you go. Ian Duncan, episode number 4 of Hopscotch Chronicles. Enjoy. Again, the portal has opened.
Here we
And
are.
just so people know what's going on here, we had some little problems as soon as I pressed record on the thing. How does it sound now?
It sounds good. Yep, I think we're good.
Cool. I think we have a bit of a lag, but we'll manage. All right. Yep. So, well, again, Ian Duncan, super happy to finally meet you. I've heard a little about you, but enough, more like as I was saying before we started recording, we have a friend in common, and this friend many times has told me you two should meet. So, I mean, that's a good occasion. I think we have to just start things off with a really deep conversation to get to the crux of things.
Excellent.
So, how you doing?
Part. I'm doing well. Yeah,
great.
I'm in New Mexico, a little north of Taos, and it's we're at 8,000 feet here, and looking up at the mountain, and it's getting cold, and winter's coming. It's been a beautiful fall. So
amazing. Yeah, it's getting pretty cool here too. Like the fall colors. I don't know if you have that over where you are, but we have all the orange and yellow trees everywhere. So
yeah,
really nice.
Beautiful.
So I'm just starting, as you know, and people know, I'm just starting doing interviews like this, and it will be a lot of fun. I think I'm going to enjoy this. And so I've been listening to podcasts for many years, and a lot of shows have, like a traditional thing that they do at the beginning, or like a traditional first question or something like that. And I really enjoy that. And so I kind of thought, well, I didn't really think of it, actually. It's a question that came while thinking about this encounter now, and I thought, wow, that would make a really cool first question to ask anybody, actually, because I think I've seen in your bio that you consider yourself a mystic, and I think I can say the same for myself. But for me, this means that whatever tradition you're a part of, humanity comes first all the time. Because even if you're in a very old tradition, but you're not, your mind is not really into it, and you're not really serious, it won't. It might do something. You know more about that than me, of course. But so I'm trying to relate to the human more than, for example, now the Daoist, or the whatever you want to call it, because for me, like, there's I just want to get to underneath all that. And of course, your human experience is going to be informed by all those years you spent studying Chinese traditions. But for sure, there's a human behind that. I'm convinced of that. So I think a really good starting point could be, Ian Duncan, what does a day in your life look like?
Yeah, I appreciate the way you articulate that. And, the word mystic shares the root with mystery, and it's kind of an acknowledgement of the unknown that, in a sense, remains unknown in spite of whatever development or accomplishment you might have encountered along the way. So I think that the specificity and individuality of a tradition like Daoism, which calls itself the twofold mystery, the mystery of mysteries, the mystery beyond the mystery that can be has a kind of supportive and particular relationship with this concept of a traditionless, a pathless mystery and source of these human activities. My human activities as I enter the day are meditation and prayer, and sometimes energetic movement if something needs to be balanced, or sometimes sort of fitness-oriented movement as well. Then that's well before dawn. That's kind of between 2 and 4, and then by the time dawn comes around, I take the dogs back in the national forest here and walk up the mountain for an hour or more, and that's a extension of my morning practice. And we live in an exceptional place that we're grateful for every day, and that's kind of the foundation of my day. And then by that time, the kids are up, and I've got a 11-year-old and a 4-year-old, and make some breakfast for the family, and get the kids off to school, and then I have time for land projects and computer work and reading and study and writing, and then sometimes teaching. I haven't been teaching in the recent past, but we'll begin again soon. And then the kids get home and it's family time again. But I have that window for productivity and exploration and being in myself or in nature or both. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Well, like starting with the term mystic, it sounds, I think to some people it can sound a bit pompous or inaccessible, or something like that should be mérité. You should merit this. My first language is French, by the way.
Validate it somehow, maybe. Validate. Maybe,
Yeah.
Or
yeah. So I'm not so sure about that. I think we should have the right to embody our own mysticism, and even if in just your description of the day, I can kind of feel it. How you said maybe some physical movement if something needs to be adjusted. That requires this type of presence, which to me is part of a mystic's path, or pathless path, if you want to call it that, because it requires this presence also to oneself and one's vehicle. So yeah, it seems embodied within your life, within the walks with the dogs and something like that. So yeah, but still, it's still a human experience, and I think like a lot of people are going to relate to. I mean, if even if you're Ian Duncan, I'm not gonna try to pronounce your Chinese name, and it's all very mysterious, and all the the beautiful calligraphy in the back and stuff like that. They're still a human, and it's the starting point of even the deepest mystical experience, I believe. So I'm gonna do an intro. I'm gonna record an intro afterwards. So I'm gonna tell details about. I'm gonna do a little bio of you, but I'm curious because I read the bio on your website, and your activities, your professional activities, seem pretty wide ranging. So just in a nutshell, so we can get to the deep stuff, but still I'd like people to have an impression of what type of work do you do, and what type of activities do you channel your work into?
Yeah, I mean, the way I interface with the human realm is as a teacher, and that for the past decade or so has been very specifically a Daoist teacher, and so I teach the view and methods of the Daoist path, and but as you know, I'm in the midst of this kind of transition back to more the mystical foundation and the root of all paths to teach and speak and write and create and act from there, rather than a named specificity. I mean, Daoism is a tradition that I fell in love with when I first encountered it, and I've had an extraordinary journey with, and I've had amazing teachers, and the methods they've given me have borne fruit in beautiful ways, and as a teacher, I've presented that with this limited lexicon specific to Daoism, in order to have the opportunity to present a clear path forward for others that works. You know, first things first, it's got to work. Second things second, you got to, you know, the person hearing it has to be able to take it in and put it into practice in their lives. And Daoism has been the vessel for that transmission for me for a long time. And I'm in the midst of this transition, which is not fully culminated or realized in myself yet, but that is a kind of return to my broader self in the context of the development and accomplishment that Daoism has, the Daoist methods and view have cultivated in me. And I don't really know what that looks like yet. But you know, my natural template, as I say, is as this pattern of being meets the world as one, as a teacher, and that will continue to be true. But I maybe prompted by some recent changes in my internal experience, in which the energy that I've channeled for over a decade in my teaching, that kind of, when I engage in a teaching context and sometimes in a creative context, or translation or writing, a certain energy comes through me that I let come through, and it empowers and clarifies, and I don't know. In a way, I think that's the value that I have to offer, is just to be a gateway for that energy. And recently, that energy has named itself as Thoth, the Egyptian god, and I don't have any previous experience with that tradition, except that when I first went down the Daoist path, it was via a study of alchemy, which I had entered into and developed as a tool and intellectual interest corresponding to my painting practice and the painting techniques and methods from way back. Like the earliest painting manual we have is by Theosophus in the year 1100, and he's Greek. And a lot of it is just details with this medium and this pigment, such and such a way. And but his context was alchemy and transforming these base materials into illusion and light and luminosity and meaning. And and in that context, I read Hermetic writings and circled around Western alchemy, which has its origin in Egypt. But I didn't have access to a continuous wisdom tradition like I did, in the Chinese wisdom traditions, and also the Tibetan Bun Buddhist traditions, which they both have. Actually, I think they share a root, but they have, call it 10,000 years conservatively of continuous human transmission, individual to individual. And that probably exists in the Egyptian tradition, but it's not one that I've encountered. And so you just have this sort of mishmash of occult writings that one doesn't know what to make of, or kind of where to put it in the spectrum of true to I just made this up, so I'm remembering that early part of my path as I try and integrate this idea of direct contact and learning directly from Thoth.
That's oh, go ahead.
Well, just to wrap it, that change in my internal experience has sort of shaken the ground a little bit, and I'm looking in and looking out and saying, what, how can I be of service here? What's my best use? And my intuition is that it may be something broader than a Daoist teacher, that it's simply teacher.
Feels like it's expanding onto like a wider array of wisdom and wisdom traditions, and it's interesting because I did read that in the little text you sent me that you had those channeling experiences with the Thoth, and you're it's pretty interesting. I'm not sure if you can see that, but in the background, the video which I made myself, there's a picture of Hermes, who's usually associated with Thoth. So that's pretty cool little synchronicity there. And also my first interview that I did was with a man called Miguel Connor, who has a Gnostic, who's had a podcast on Gnosticism for many years. And he often says that we're in the age of Hermes, often seen like as a trickster god in a way, So it makes sense that to me at least, like that this energy would come up in a way, And I think that's a good that's a good segue for another question that I had for you, because as it's probably clear now because I keep saying it, my first
Great.
the thing I put the most importance is my direct experience, which doesn't mean that I'm not open to other people's. But I'm kind of exploring the idea of what exactly is an entity. I mean, it even brings it back to us as human beings. For now, the way that I experience, let's say, the gods or disincarnate entities, I often call them archetypes in a way, because I feel them as just as a different kind of energy. And I haven't had an experience that has convinced me 100% that it's not a part of my own experience. Sorry, I'm not being clear. That these entities behave more like waves of energy than actual volitional or entities sentient and with a personal will, which doesn't mean that they don't have that. But then, I mean, we could go really far and say, well, what says that we have really true free will and that
So
we are
this is a
not
question.
just...
I want to interrupt you because you've already kind of, with that question, you've bumped into a lot of very foundational things that are worth getting well organized in one's mind. And
I mean,
go ahead.
Maybe you have something very precise, because I can, if I don't want it to be too, what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, too convoluted, and because basically I'm wondering about the nature of those. Well, okay, let's put it very simply. Ian, do you think the gods or disincarnate entities have will? Yeah, I think that summarizes it.
Okay. Well, you can make it simple, but I'm gonna make it complicated before I get back to the simple. So
Go ahead.
So I do want to address parts of your question because I think they're very important. Not in just identifying some specific meaning in conversation, but in for anyone that might listen to this on a path of becoming an adept in whatever way, that distinguishing very clearly that which you know from direct experience and that which you receive on faith, which is an important part. Like, you need to be able to receive potential models of reality and understandings from people who have traveled the path before. You need to be open to that, but you also need to know very clearly what is your direct experience and how does it meet that. And so I just didn't want to let that disappear, because I think that's like the fundamental through line to the path of a spiritual adept. Okay, so then the other thing we need to parse a little bit in order to answer the question clearly and simply is what is free will, and where can we, in what context can we talk about it sensibly? And the way that I've come to navigate this and model it for my own day-to-day experience and for my students is to propose that we develop the ability to simultaneously understand things at different levels. I think of them as valences, in which the center is ultimate reality, unity, totality, that which without distinction.
Can you just repeat that word? So, I'm sorry. Valence.
Valence.
I just want.
Valences are from the chemical model of an atom. The electrons orbit an atom at different distances from the atom.
Okay.
And so they have you could say orbits. You could say like the different planets with respect to the sun. So
yeah. Sorry, I didn't want to. I want to make sure that I get what you're saying.
Sure. Yeah. So we want to be able to understand our experience multivalently. And so the word equivalent is equal valence, and the word multivalent is so we're understanding things on two different levels at the same time. And on the one level, like, I choose to walk up the mountain today, or I choose not to, or I choose what I'm going to have for breakfast. It feels like choice. And there may be some utility to unwinding that illusion, because it is an illusion. But there's also some dysfunctionality in the day-to-day to demand of yourself that you recognize in every moment there's no free will, there's no choice, there's no agency. But from the level of the absolute, the level in which out of the absolute, the experienced world is born and returns, there is only pattern, and pattern that affects pattern, and there's no isolation even, individuals, different objects, they're really just fields of being, fields of pattern that are influencing each other and on this fractal and fugal dance on the way from here to there. So the feeling of having a choice is really just all of the different preceding patterns converging into the next pattern. And it is determined, in my view. And I think in a shared traditional Enlightenment tradition view. So when we ask, do the entities have will? It's not really clear what we're asking, to me, it's just pattern, I guess. So, and the entities themselves, just as we are just a temporary coherence of a particular pattern. And it comes together like a breath, and then it disperses again. And whether that coherence is a moment or 16,000 years is not important, really. It's still a breath, whatever the time frame is. And so that a particular being, reveals itself to me or something. You can make these stories, but it's better not to make the story. It's happening. Even the words I'm speaking, the words that I shape after an experience to convey that experience, those two are determined. So it's just kind of this interaction, this play, this dance of light, this play of pattern. And I think that we could ascribe will to them as much as we ascribe will to ourselves. But then I think that's a story that we can use in order to communicate with each other. But I think that we shouldn't forget that the apparent agency, the apparent existence of choice is an illusion at the same time. So I would argue for maintaining both those perspectives at the same time.
Mm-hmm. It's really interesting. I've recently, I don't know what I was doing, probably something trivial. And just this thought came into my head, and it's, like you want to get to the truth. I don't know if where that thought came from. You want to get to the truth. Well, to feel that you got to the truth with a big T about anything, actually, to me, the indication you got there is when you get to paradox. Like, and that's why I kind of personally distinguish between reality and truth itself. And well, speaking like you were like with what you were saying, what is generally called reality seems to you like it's an illusion, and I understand that. And to me, like it's completely unoriginal what I'm going to say, but it's the limits of language. We're always stuck in those like little boxes which are words, and I tend to see in my own practice, if you want to call it that, my life. It's better to use, or it's useful to use words as more than definite things, like more than numbers. Use them as variables. So basically, I see words as a container which we collectively put meaning inside of to be able to interact with each other. But there are those words that are like tricky, that there's, if you open it up, if you unpack it, there's a whole bunch of shit in there that like it's like, why? No, I don't agree with this, but I agree. Like everybody, like if I tell you, oh, can you bring me an apple? Like there's very little chance that you're gonna bring me a screwdriver, like it's pretty clear what's in there. But reality, love, truth, like it's almost to the point where, well, what's the use of those words afterwards, after all, So reality, I try to use the word reality as what is part of this flow, part of this big fractal that started to grow and mutate since the beginning of time. I guess reality to me is related to time, but then it's what I put into it. And when someone tells me reality, there's a deeper reality or something like that, I totally get it. And I understand a definition of reality that negates the way that I portray it, and which is I'm trying to also to make it closer to people's experience, so we can use it again collectively. Like if reality is an illusion, well, yeah, there that maybe you already have a lot to say on all this, but it brings me to another question that I wanted to ask you about is if reality is an illusion. It's going to sound like a pothead question. I don't even smoke pot, whatever. If reality is an illusion, man, why don't we just fall into nihilism, so, and I have my own answers to that questions and my own experience that I just want to make it clear that I freed myself from the nihilism. But even the way that you've used, I've listened to an interview that you did, I think in last July or something like that, on another podcast, and you used the term Dao as radiant emptiness, and I love that representation of whatever void, the consideration that reality is an illusion brings us into. There was a lot there. I don't know if you can. It inspires something.
It's good. Let's wander in that space a little bit. So, I think it's useful to narrow in on a somewhat stable way, enduring way that you want to use the word reality. The way I use it is inclusive of, but not limited to, the experienced reality that, we call it illusion, and even the word illusion, I would want to sort of pull that word apart before I would want to pull apart the word reality. The word reality, I think, is useful, and because the truth that we're looking for that will set us free is the truth of what is really real, and the way that, in common parlance, one can say an entity, a god, a ghost is not really real. You don't make any sense. You're talking about these things and it's not real. And rather than bring my understanding of the word reality and my understanding of reality to meet that word, the way it's used in that context, I would argue that the job is the reverse, to break down that understanding of reality so that it can open to a bigger understanding of reality. Most of the developments in our own understandings along the way are that kind of process of breaking down a boundary, a vessel that is limited in itself and is limiting ourselves. And we break it open, it's bigger, and now we've got a bigger vessel, and we got to break that down. And then we've got, and eventually there's no vessel. And so the way I use the word reality is to refer to the boundless reality, the radiant emptiness, the reality that is inclusive of all things, completion, totality. And it includes, we could say big R and little r, uh, our our day-to-day, our touch experience, our sense experience, even our thoughts. We can call this little r reality. But what is really real is inclusive of all things and unchanging, because there can be no change in the boundless. That which it has no time and space, so it can't develop and morph. And in my view, it's a good use of the word reality in that context.
Well, I think we're closer in our definition, because, as I said, it's more useful for me to see a word as a variable. Variable. Not sure how to pronounce it.
Yep.
Variable.
Yep.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I'm just trying to parse, what within this reality of movement. To me, it's more, at this point, the word means the movement. So what has impact on that movement? So it does include other things than just the physical reality. An emotion is not seen by anyone, and of course people are going to say, well, it's electrical and chemical impulses, but I mean, how do they come up? How do they form? That's just the physical manifestation of it. And but something triggered those impulses outside of just sometimes outside of just physical stimuli. So I have no problem including ghosts and gods into my definition of reality, because it's variable. So, but I'd like to, if you don't mind, I'd like to bring it back to this idea of nihilism. It feels like it might feel over the course of those interviews that I'm doing that I often come to that subject very often, because I think it's I don't want to call it a menace, because to me, the way that I've grown through the nihilism has been very important to my understanding of truth and reality. My understanding. But there's so much that is going on right now that, like, for people to fall into that trap of nihilism, it's going to happen to a lot of people, I believe, in starting now. Maybe it has started in the last few years, So I'm already at that point where I'm trying to figure out how to help people get out of this suicidal state of mind, and I don't know what your experience of nihilism is. Maybe you have never fell for that trap, but maybe, I don't know, do you have anything that comes up when mentioning that word?
Yeah, I mean, I'm familiar with that part of human experience intimately, and I think that the journey you describe of yourself, your own journey, is precisely evidence of the fullness of that emptiness. and that going into that void led to growth and development and love and compassion and optimism and the generative impulse, the creative impulse, which is even coming out of a nihilistic state. The generative impulse is an expression of hope and optimism and love and compassion and desire to connect and desire to be whole. And nihilism is a common step along the way. And it is different than the emptiness that we talk about in the traditional language, as I know you're aware of. But the reason I pair those words is a way to express that, the form of emptiness and the emptiness of form, the fullness of emptiness, and that knowing that those, that word pairing is paradoxical, and being comfortable with it is part of developing the mind to be a capable vessel of higher truth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a touchy subject, because it's well, as I was saying, it feels to me like if you want to live truthfully, I think you've kind of worded it. That's basically what you said, but inhabiting this state of living paradox is kind of the trick. I'm not sure how. Maybe you can talk about that, but I'm not sure how it can be taught. Like it feels like just something that happens, and that for me, without getting too deep in my own experience, there's two experiences that I'm not going to describe, but one was very dark. One at a particular time in my life, in my 20s, my early 20s, I just decided to embrace the darkness and all those dark feelings and the despair that I felt, and which happened over the course of a night, one night. And when I woke up in the morning, that feeling of having nothing to lose, that starts with, well, I got nothing to lose, but it ends with, oh, I got nothing to lose, and that brilliance that I absorbed that morning. And the other time was just very simple, just meditating, and then just this thought that came in my head, like, oh, life's a game, like it's a game. And it sounds so trivial, and people say this, but I felt like I felt that phrase in all my cells, in all my atoms, and even that is too much of a materialist way of putting it. Well, not really. Like it was like some kind of transcendence, and I just started to laugh, So I think those two experiences, the first pushed me into nihilism and the void, and the second pulled me out of it. But to my point, which I'm struggling to make concise, is this. I don't think I could have been taught that, so maybe that's why my path feels so solitary, and maybe I've never met maybe I'm not ready for the master, to teach me. So can it be helped, or because you said something like it's a step in people's evolution, if you want to call it that. So is nihilism like a necessary step, and can people be helped with that at all, or should we just look and hope for the best?
Yeah. I mean, there are a lot of interesting things in there. I think there's a way in which, nothing can ever be taught. You can only sort of point out what you already know, but that's a helpful process, and say, I recognize what you recognize, and in recognizing it together, we have confidence in its veracity. And that's very supportive, and that's why it's supportive to have companions on the way, as we say in Daoism. And as a teacher, I'd say probably one of my failings as a teacher is trying to explain things, when actually it's more true that you can only know what you already know. But I do find that as a teacher, as a friend, you can help establish the conditions for self-realization. And one of those conditions, in the context of nihilism, might be hope or faith. And faith not in the sense of, I believe in some Daoist God or some Christian God or something, but in maybe two things. Maybe in that there is an ultimate truth, and that in the context of our experiences, change is the only truth. And so this feeling is, a moment in a sequence of change, and knowing that the feeling and what you think about what you think will be different in the morning, and the difference between I have nothing to lose, as an angered contraction, and I have nothing to lose as a beautiful liberation, is the difference of a few moments in time. And so if that faith can be shared, then the self-realization, the self-recognition can be supported and enabled. And like when somebody is in danger of hurting themselves, which is kind of what you're alluding to in kind of desperate times, not of your own experience, I'm not projecting anything there, but in terms of a cultural despair. In the case of supporting an individual in a moment of crisis, really all you're doing is protecting them from harm until the moment passes, until they bring themselves through it. And that's a good analogy for everything else that we do. It may not have that extreme appearance, but if your child is in a temper tantrum and throwing things, banging it, whatever they do, your only job is to establish safety until that particular turbulence, that weather pattern, passes through. And I do think it's important to have those extremes of human experience in order to understand yourself and others. I think that really one of my strengths as a teacher, as a human, is the breadth and depth of my direct human experience. And as a result, I can hear you. And that is mostly all a person needs. That's the safety zone. I'm not crazy. I'm not bad. I'm not whatever. I'm just human. And I am known. I am known and not alone.
I love that. And it's funny because, that's why I want to do these encounters. It's funny because there's just a movement that you did with your hands that people listening to just audio are not gonna see, of course, but this move that you made with kind of in protecting people, like for example a friend or a student or a child, and this move that you made with your hand like a protective shell, that taught me a little or a lot, because I think I'm gonna tell you why, is because even the term hope, sometimes I have a hard time with, not because I don't experience it, but because I try to trying is maybe the wrong word, but I tried to go towards a space or a mindset that kind of nullifies the very idea of danger. That I there isn't any danger, so I don't need hope. Like if I'm in suffering, by observing that suffering, usually it's enough. I don't really need to do anything to get out of it. Although if I put my hand on a burning stove, I will remove it. But because I had a question I want to ask you, but and we're already getting to the end. I for sure, that's not enough, and I hope we have other occasions. But I want to ask you precisely what your relationship was like with with Master Wu, who seemed like a very, very important figure in your life. And but I don't want to get necessarily into that question, because there's a bigger one, like what is the role of a teacher and a master, because and apparently they take different forms, different shapes. And for me, I think the biggest, the most important teacher is nature, and more precisely trees and plants, which is very ironic, because I still kind of have a hard time keeping them alive, but I've had this transformative experience with a poem, Rumi poem. In fact, just a sentence, and he was talking about, more or less, about the voice that says to the rose to open, to bloom. And from the moment I read that sentence, I said, "Oh, that's what I want to hear," that voice of nature. And then we see in nature as just as much death as there is life. That's normal, So, not to ramble too much, which, well, it's kind of too late for that, but like it puts into a weird twist on how should we act with other people, and because you've described yourself as a teacher, which is something like I would never be able to do, maybe. And that's not it's not shade on you or anything. It's more descriptive of my struggling with what impact should I have on other people's natural happenings, But that movement, to bring it back to that also, I guess, has to come from a natural impulse, that protecting of people who are suffering or in a weaker state or something like that.
Yeah, it's a complicated question to answer, because it sort of weaves back and forth among the valences, as we were talking about earlier. So, and I hold the role, I hold the idea comfortably, paradoxically, and because I don't propose to have an impact. Actually, I just there, in any given group of humans, they have different patterns, and my pattern is a teacher pattern, and so I inhabit that, and I do my best to express that pattern as gracefully and with strength and compassion that I can. But the main action is just really being able to hear somebody who's on the path and having experience and doesn't know what to do with it. And so I hear it. I say, I understand. I've had that experience, and maybe add some detail about my own experience if it seems like that's supportive. But that's it. And then, in some ways, I'm an instructor in a much lesser way. Like I have methods, if methods are what's required on your path right now, then here's some methods, and they help establish the conditions for your own self-development, which will happen anyway, but it can be more graceful or it can be harder, and the methods make it easier. And having somebody to share your experience and hear it and potentially help you parse what's what you're making up and what you're not. Because in this time of total knowledge on the internet, you can, if you're on a spiritual path, you can imagine that you're having experiences. And so one of the roles that a teacher has is to say, are you sure? Really? Because certain things go with other things. The pattern is not isolated. It's not like this, I just blasted open my, upper dantian or something, or third eye, or whatever it is, whatever the barrier, some barrier just got crossed. And it's, if somebody is relaying, all the right language, but doesn't have all the other signs, they're stuck in a loop, and they can, a mental imaginary loop. And it can be a benefit for a teacher to say, are you sure?
Yeah. Yeah, man, I just want to do this forever. I just love speaking with the this same nucleus of wisdom that comes through each and one of us. And I don't know, it's just the second interview that I'm doing, and already I feel like I'm learning deeply. I was so stressed, oh, I have to make this entertaining for people, and it has to be not too boring. And I didn't really expect this experience to be so full of teaching for me, and I just want to make sure made clear that I didn't my intention was not to get you to justify what makes you able to call yourself a teacher. That's absolutely not what I meant.
Yeah, no. One of the benefits of making some progress internally is you lose the concern for qualification and attribution, and it's not about
even if it was what I meant, it wouldn't have bothered you, I guess.
I went to a Bun Dzogchen retreat, and a while back, and in that context, in that community, somebody was like, "How can you call yourself a meditation teacher?" I don't call myself anything. It's just what I do,
Yeah. Something you maybe just end up noticing that you say things and you've lived things and you share them, and some people learn from them. So that makes you a teacher.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, in it's interesting in different spiritual communities, the opportunities for trading out a rigid worldview for another one, rather than using this context and this wisdom to break open your worldview. I didn't articulate it well, but anyway, that it's easy for that to happen, and not helpful. You were stuck there, and now you're stuck here. It's, maybe it's a little better. Maybe it's some positive energy there. Maybe you're in a better community, something. But, but there's no development. At some other retreat, somebody said to me, you're not practicing Qigong in our prayer sessions, are you? It's like, if you bring like an idea of, crystallized purity into, the lexicon of the tradition, or the specific words the guru happens to say on that day, you're moving in the opposite direction.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Okay. Well, I don't know. Maybe I'll have to make these sessions longer. It's my, I'm just starting. I'm inviting people over to speak with me, and I barely have any followers at the moment. So maybe I'm like, oh, maybe just an hour, but for sure, like it's not enough. I wanted to,
I find that there's a human rhythm that tends to wrap itself up after 90 minutes, and that at that point, going away and coming back is better than continuing.
I see.
I don't know if that's just an observation. I don't know if that's fixed in some way, but in teaching, like on retreat, where all you're doing is teaching all day, if you go over 90 minutes, you're kind of wasting time. And
I see.
So I wonder, maybe that's true in this context too, and having follow-up conversations when you've had enough guests in between that it feels like coming back is interesting and fun. Then that would be good. But I don't think you need to justify yourself. You bring a lot to the table, and people will enjoy the conversation and the journey, and they'll be glad to have said yes.
I'm sure. I hope so. Yeah, I mean, if I look at my list of questions, I mean, we haven't talked about divination. We haven't talked about what is there? Do you have a model of the ego? A distinction between enlightenment and awakening? Like, we could talk for hours. So, yeah, I think we're going to wrap it up for today.
Stuff to get into. Yeah, we can. I don't know.
And I'll figure, like, some people have models where they have like a first hour is free for everyone, and then second hour is for like Patreon supporters or something like that.
Yeah,
I mean, especially for like me in my situation, like right now, by living very, very, very frugal in a frugal way, I can manage to just do this, but that's not eternal. Like, I'm gonna have to get the money in. So, but still, like, I'm struggling with that. Like, there's as I don't know if you've ever heard of Charles Eisenstein. He said once, there's, because his own business model is based on donations, and he said there's enough. I think there's enough scarcity in the world without creating more. And now that's me talking. All this knowledge, like, I want it to be as available as it is. So I don't know. It's kind of a dilemma for me to figure all this out. But, this idea of having a longer conversation and making part of it accessible for, I don't know why I'm saying that to you. Maybe you have ideas on that and we can talk about it later.
I would wait till you got some momentum and then you can decide how to shape things, right? I think that, I've always worked on the donation path, and it's worked out. It tends to, with the energy you put in, tends to come back. But, that's not always a possibility. You got to work with the reality you have, but also sort of look forward with optimism to the potential reality.
Absolutely. All right. So we're at the end of our talk for today. So Ian Duncan, where can people learn about you and your work? Where can they keep up with the things you want to share with them? All the links are going to be in the show notes, but if you want to address that.
The website is completereality.org, O-R-G. And you can sign up for a newsletter there. I've been relatively inactive on socials and newsletter for a while now. I've got a website revamp that I haven't quite finished. But that will remain the hub of however you might want to find me. I do have an account. I think everything's at either Complete Reality or Ian or Duncan on the various things, but I'm not posting actively on. I started a Twitter, but I haven't. I think Twitter is the least offensive social, so I might have that be my main outward projection. But everything will be findable via completereality.org.
All right. Shall we say until next time?
Until next time, absolutely. It was a pleasure.
All right. Thank you so much for this, not only for your presence, your physical presence in front of this machine called the computer, but for your heartfelt presence too. Thank you very, very much, Ian.
Thank you.
So you've made it to the end of this Hopscotch Chronicles podcast episode, and I hope that you've enjoyed it as much as I've enjoyed doing it. And I thank you so much for your attention, and I hope you're benefiting in a way or another from this conversation. So if you'd like to follow my work, whether on this podcast or my personal work, you can go to Twitter or X and follow me at Domi_Valet, DOMI_Valet. Same username for Instagram, if you prefer that platform. You can also go to the official website for the podcast, which is hopscotchchronicles.com. And if you'd like to support the podcast as well as my personal work, you can do so by subscribing to my Patreon. The address is patreon.com/Dominic Vallée, DOMINIC Vallée, VALLEE. There you'll find video and audio versions of the episodes without any commercials, as well as special episodes on every Sunday where I take my Sunday afternoon tea with you guys. All right, thanks again for listening, and until next time, keep reaching for the light.